This is literally the smallest space that I've ever tried to film in.
The entire room is about 9 by 7 feet, just enough for a desk, a chair, and me. Barely. The challenge? Can I transform this tiny office space into a full-blown YouTube studio where I can shoot all of my videos? First, let's start with the layout. When your room is this small, the camera angle is everything. I'm shooting into the corner to create the most depth possible. If I were to shoot this straight on with just one wall in the background, I'm sure I could make it work, but there just wouldn't be as much depth in the shot. Now, this is a lease, so I was somewhat limited to what I could do to the walls and what I could do to modify the space. I couldn't paint, or at least I didn't want to paint, so I started looking at what were the options of what I could do with these two walls in the room, because I wasn't overly happy with the gray and the white walls that came with the space. I ended up using Google Gemini's new Nano Banana to mock up what the space would look like with a couple of different design options. AI is getting really good at editing images and creating images in general, and this is just one really dope use case of AI. You can iterate really quickly and mock up a space without spending any money or time in the process. I ended up landing on these acoustic black foam sound panels that I found on Amazon for $50. My goal when I was designing this space and setting it up was to try and do it on the lowest budget possible. So for $50, I was able to turn this gray wall into a black wall in a very short amount of time, and I'm quite happy with how it turned out. Plus, I get the added benefit of sound dampening the room a little bit, which is awesome. On the white wall, I wasn't quite sure at first how I wanted to finish it. I seriously considered doing a wood slat wall, but because this is a lease, that just seemed like a lot of work and a lot of money to spend on something that I wasn't really even sure would work. So I mocked that up in Nano Banana too, and I'm really glad that I didn't go down that road and I mocked it up first, because I actually didn't really love it that much. So I scrapped that idea and ended up going with a pegboard that I bought at IKEA for around $30. I bought a few $10 shelves, a few fake plants, and for just under $100, I was able to turn that white wall into what you see right now. I'm actually really happy with how this turned out, considering how little money I was able to spend doing so. All right, then it's all about lighting. I start by turning out all the overhead lights, blacking out the window on the door using a cheap blackout curtain that I bought on Amazon till the room goes completely black, and then I build it back up from scratch, being in full control of the lighting. My main light, or my key light, is positioned at an angle just out of frame here. I didn't have to buy this light as I already had this GVM LED light with a softbox and a grid on it, because I've been using this light for the last 3 years since I started on YouTube. Not bad for only $300. With only the key light on, the room looked pretty dark and not a lot going on to it, so I played around with a couple of the LED tube lights that I had to try and get some practical lights and some background light to make the shot a little more interesting. I wasn't really in love with how the LED lights were lighting the room. It's probably just how I was setting it up, but I ended up bringing a couple lamps that I had at home to finish the shot. I got these lamps both at IKEA, and I think they were around $30 each, so $60 for the two lights. Again, I already had these at home because I was using them in my previous YouTube setup, so I didn't need to spend that money on this setup. I really like the warm, cozy vibe that they give off, and that's kind of what I've been liking in my video setups lately, so I'm actually quite happy with how this light turned out. Now, I added one more edge light to the shot, which is just out of frame above me here, and it's just a cheap little LED tube light that's giving some depth to the shot by adding a little bit of light to my shoulders and the back of my head. This is a really cheap LED tube light that I bought on, I think it was Temu actually, for only $20. I have a couple other ones, but this one is my favorite right now just because of how long the battery life lasts. I feel like this thing just never dies, whereas some of my other even more expensive ones, I have to charge it for every single video. This thing just doesn't die. So this is just a reminder that sometimes the cheapest stuff is the most surprising and adds the most value. The tube light is mounted to a little coat hook that was already on the wall, which I don't know why there's a coat hook up there, but anyway, I mounted it using a small little friction arm that I already had. I played around with the exposure of the key light and the other lights and the rim light and the white balance a little bit until I was happy with the final shot. Since I'm shooting an S-Log3 on my Sony a7 IV, I have a lot of room in post-production to color grade, so as long as I nail the exposure, I'll be good to go. I'm currently shooting on the Sigma 24-70 f2.8 lens, and I have a mist filter on the front, a quarter mist filter. For audio, again, I already had this microphone, so I didn't need to spend anything on it, but I'm using the Shure SM7B, which is definitely my favorite sounding microphone out of all the microphones that I've ever used. I did need to buy this microphone arm that mounts to the desk, which I ended up picking up on Amazon for around $100. I had all the cables and the audio interfacing stuff, so really it was just the mount that I had to buy. It's crazy to me how much you can change even a small space like this with just a little bit of design intent. This isn't a big studio, it's just a little corner, but I feel like after doing all this, it's my little corner now. And that's all I really need to make videos, to make great stuff. I'll probably end up tweaking it again as my design interests change and just as time progresses, but I'm pretty happy with how this turned out for now, especially considering the small amount of money that I spent on actually modifying the space itself. Obviously, the camera and the lens setup and the mic that I'm using are a little on the expensive side, but that doesn't mean that you have to use these types of lenses, these types of cameras, microphones to get good looking shots. You could easily have shot this with your phone using a cheap lav mic or just whatever you can afford. All this to say that if you have a small space and you've been putting off putting together a YouTube studio, just do it. You don't need more space. You just need to get creative with the space that you already have. Welcome to the new studio, and I'll see you guys in the next one.